So, good morning, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear participants and dear honored guests. I would like to ask you now to take a seat, and it's nice that the volume of the voices goes immediately down. That means you're very well trained to start this conference, because we would like to open our 9th European Organic Congress now in Riga, organized from the IFOAM group together with the Latvian presidency of the Council of the European Union, as well as with the Latvian Association for Organic Farming. And yeah, we have now the opening panel. We have a program very ambitious, where we talk the day one about the politics that we all deal with in the current time, and tomorrow with an outlook to plan really the future where organic wants to go on the long term. So very different programs and 2 different days, and of course a lot of time for networking. Great time today at the Baltic Sea in the evening for networking, so all is inclusive, and so I welcome you. We have again more than 150 registration here from I think more than 20 countries coming. And yeah, I would like, I'm Marco Schlüter, the director. I'm moderating together with Aivars Lapiņš, who's the Deputy State Secretary of Latvia, and having, of course, on the panel also the Latvian Minister and also the President of the European Council, Christopher Stopes, the President of IFOAM EU, and Martin Häusling, Member of the European Parliament, and not less important, also Rapporteur of the dossier on the organic regulation. And before I hand over to Aivars, I would also to thank again the Latvians for doing this with us, because it's always a great honor to put this conference on the level of an official presidency conference. And I also have to add, you did a lot for organic, because you organized the Rural Development Directors meeting and dedicated to organic, and you even invited also IFOAM, I have to say, which is also important. And you did the same for the informal council meeting. So you deal not only with the very difficult issue of the organic legislation, which we will discuss, I think, then with our speakers, but you also dedicated beyond this on rural development, on supporting policies, 2 important meetings. So thanks for this. This support was clearly recognized. And yeah, so I hand over to you.
Yeah, paldies.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Marco. I would like to speak in Latvian, as our minister will be providing in Latvian as well. And so I will test the simultaneous interpretation devices so that you can switch between channels, as English is number 1 and Latvian is number 2. Of course, we would like to thank you, the IFOAM, for our contribution and cooperation for organizing this Congress, and I would like to thank you, the President of Latvian Organic Farming Association. Of course, briefly I would like to mention that we have had a lot of sleepless nights lately, and we have spent many hours devoted to organic farming, and we are really appreciating and we are glad and happy for the file and chapter we are working with, and thus we could not organize alongside with Marco and member states. As I understand, later you'll have an informal meeting at a restaurant named 36 Line in the evening in Jūrmala. And as we are trying to deal with chapter or article 36A, I hope that we'll manage to change the name of that restaurant and that venue to 36A for Organic Farming Directive and Regulation. Thus, without any further delay, I would like to thank once again IFOAM for this Congress taking place here in Riga, in Latvia. Now I would like to give the floor back to Marco to introduce our Minister of Agriculture. Welcome.
Thank you, and I think now is also time to let the important people speak. So I would like to invite the President of the European Council, Jānis Dūklavs, now to open the conference.
Dear participants of the Congress, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you at the 9th European Organic Congress in Riga. I would like to express my gratitude to the International Federation of Organic Agriculture Movement for that great opportunity and the honor we have to organize this Congress here in Riga, in Latvia. Sector of organic farming has been growing and developing year by year. Area of organically farmed land increases significantly annually. The market value of organic farming in the European Union has more than doubled since 2004. The produce made in the European Union constituted approximately 40% of entire and whole market of organic farm produce in the world. A stable tendency and trend for increasing area of organically farmed land and space in Latvia has increased up to 11% of total arable land for agriculture in Latvia. Following the rapid development and growth of organic farming, it's really important to discuss and consider the forecast for the future by searching some new ways for development in the perspective after 2030. Last week, the Latvian presidency organized informal meeting of four of the ministers for agriculture of the European Union member states. At that meeting, alongside with representatives of the European Parliament, the Commissioner for Agriculture and Marine and Fisheries Matters, Phil Hogan, as well as ministers from the member states, we discussed the future of organic farming alongside with non-governmental organizations as well. The discussion involved such important issues as controlling system, fair trade, fair competitiveness, and increased trust among consumers to organic farming. And of course, the proposal for organic farming new regulation, which is really important matter for all the member states and stakeholders of the regulation. The Latvian presidency is coming to an end by the end of this month in the Council of European Union, but we still will continue intensively working at the compromise proposal for organic farming. We consider that we'll discuss that at the meeting next week, and I hope and I presume that we'll come to an agreement on the final version or wording of that proposal regulation. I would like to wish you really fruitful discussion and really recognitions for all the participants of the Congress. I hope that you'll be introduced and get acquainted with the capital of Riga and companies you'll visit in the next days. Thank you for your attention.
Jā, paldies ministrkungam.
Thank you, Minister. And the next one is, I would like to give the floor to Martin Häusling, who is Deputy of the European Parliament, and what is very important, he is also a rapporteur for the legislative proposal for the new organic regulation on behalf of the Parliament. Please, Mr. Häusling, the floor is yours.
Minister, and thank you for the invitation. And I'm the rapporteur for the organic regulation in the Parliament, and I present my report at the end of May in the ComAgri. And I hope we can find an agreement in the Parliament, maybe in the beginning of September. So now all members of the European Parliament had the chance to make amendments for the 22nd of June, and then we start our negotiations to find compromises, to get a compromise in the Parliament. And we don't know what is coming out next week in the Council, and we don't know the situation. At the moment, I think it's very difficult in the Council between the positions between the member states. And the main point of discussion is thresholds. I, as rapporteur, I don't want a new regulation of thresholds. I want no thresholds in a new proposal. I think it's unfair to make a new regulation for organic and with thresholds in. Because when you ask consumers, do you want pesticides in food? Everyone says no in organic and in conventional foods. So I think it's not necessary to make a new proposal only in organic to say zero tolerance for pesticides. Organic is not a definition about pesticides-free food. Organic starts with better soil conservation, with better regulations and better conditions for animals, and it ends with a better food at the end, but not only pesticide-free. And one point, it's new in my proposal. We saw it in the discussion, one of the biggest problems is we have 28 member states with 28 different regulations with the same regulation base. So I think we need a harmonizing in the European level. In my proposal, I say we need a new agency for organic regulation. The agency has the chance to make the same standard in 28 member states, better controls, better regulation, more information, and we need a better regulation for imports. The import regime at now is not a good thing. We had more than 60 standards, but we cannot now make, like the Commission wants to do it, to say everyone must follow our regulation in Europe. I think it's not possible. We need for imports regional standards, and this is the main point in my proposal. So we cannot say all farmers in the world have to do it with our regulation in Europe. It's not possible, I think. So there are a lot of points. There are a lot of points in my amendments. I think it's a good start of discussion. Maybe in September we can try to begin the trilogue between the member states, Commission, and the Parliament. So I hope we can finish the deals at the end of 2015. So the sector has a chance to have a better regulation and to have a regulation that stands more than 5 years, maybe for 10 or 20 years. So one main point is in my amendments, we don't want so much chance for the Commission to change anything with delegated acts. We want only a few delegated acts, and we want all regulations in the basic act. This is the main point of my proposals. So thank you, and I hope we have a fruitful discussion now, and you can look in my proposal to see what is different between the regulation that the Commission wants and what is now the chance to make a good deal with the Council to find a good agreement for. Thank you.
Paldies, Mārtiņ.
Paldies, Martin. Thank you, Martin. That's really what's happening in Parliament today is that what reflects Council's main issues that we are working on, and definitely these are the main issues. You mentioned also other, but I hope that we will manage in June to make an agreement in the Council. So, and further on, the Luxembourg's presidency on behalf of the Council will continue these discussions with the Parliament and achieve a good solution for consumers and organic producers and traders, and so on, and in Europe and in the whole world as well. So that's why it is my honor to give the floor to Christopher Tope, who is the IFOAM EU President. Christopher had the chance also to visit Latvia. As Marco said, we invited him to informal ministers meeting, and I hope he has already got a view. And Christopher, the floor is yours.
Welcome to everybody here at the 9th European Organic Congress, and thanks, Minister Dūklavs, particularly, both in your role as Minister of Agriculture in Latvia, but also, and most importantly, in your role as the Presidency of the European Council. Welcome to the Commission, of course. Thanks to the Latvian Organic Agriculture Association, the participation of the Parliament as well. And I think it's worth noting, as the Minister said, that there has been green growth in the Latvian organic sector. It has seen remarkable growth, as the Minister also mentioned, is the case for the European market altogether. But I hear real silence in this hall. You could almost hear a pin drop, because we are all deeply concerned and engaged in this process of developing a new regulation. Now, I think it's worth noting at the outset that the Presidency, the Commission, the Council and the Parliament all agree on the importance of promoting and enabling the sector to develop. And indeed, the theme of this 9th European Organic Congress is policies for green growth. And tomorrow we'll think more about our vision for the future for the organic sector. When we think of the regulation, I would say that IFOAM EU Group, in representing the European organic sector, has seen the best way forward as improvement to the existing regulation. But I think we must acknowledge that we've moved on from that, and with the new proposal from the Commission, we have to develop new responses to different regulatory proposals. And I think we must acknowledge the amazing job that the Latvian Presidency, following on from the Italians, have done in improving the original proposal from the Commission. The control system is back into the regulation. The exemption for retailers from the inspection regime are two good examples of the way in which the regulation that we now have before us is improved on the original proposal. And of course, the goal of the review was to enable the dynamic development of the organic sector throughout Europe. Now, we in IFOAM, our members, many of you here present today, have followed the Council progress closely and have been closely involved in assisting and aiming to offer positive solutions to the issues that have been raised. And I'm confident and believe that a good agreement is possible, so we need to move forward. The good job that the Latvian Presidency have done in trying to unite essentially opposing positions has been a really difficult task, and I see significant diversity of member states. There is a big difference in the positions of different member states. For example, in the issue of thresholds and controls, it seems to me to be clear that we need a level playing field between member states. And perhaps to illustrate the importance of this, an analogy outside of organic altogether may be helpful. Imagine you have your children playing in the garden with a tree that they want to climb, and the winner of the game is the child that reaches the highest point in the tree. But many of the children in that party have been told by their parents that they can only climb to a certain height of the tree. The only way that some of the children that have been prohibited from climbing higher to win is by effectively breaking the rules. If you see that analogy as illustrative of the way in which the current proposal leads to a division between member states, we must find a solution. So the sector's need for progress is to have a consistent and coherent approach. There can't be two different approaches in one article. This applies specifically to the issue of thresholds and also control, but also in other areas of the proposal of the regulation. So what we look forward to is a coherent and consistent regulation that can enable that green growth of the organic sector in Europe. And the critical opportunity for this is in front of us next week at the Council of Ministers meeting on the 16th of June. I am absolutely confident that we cannot work with a threshold end product-based approach to the regulation, and Mr. Häusling has reiterated that from the parliamentarian's point of view. But as I said, there is division amongst member states. As representatives of the sector, as representing people here present today, and also, of course, throughout Europe, many thousands of farmers, of processors, of retailers, all want to help move forward, and we're keen, representing that sector, to help find a solution by Tuesday and give a result that enables the growth of the sector. We have consistently provided positive suggestions for that improvement to the regulation. And what we need, critically, is a level playing field amongst member states. Otherwise, we will have little coherence in the marketplace, little relevance of the single European organic logo, and an impossibility in trade between member states in the single market. So what I urge the Latvian presidency, and what I offer by way of our close involvement in reaching a successful solution, is to find a way through this difficult road towards a new regulation and deal with the critical issues in a way that enables harmonisation and a level playing field between member states. But to close, I think I want us to remember that the Latvian presidency has done great work, and particularly remember that the Latvian Organic Agriculture Association, in holding together the sector in Latvia and enabling that great growth in the sector in this country, is an example of the sort of success that I'm confident we can achieve for the whole of the European Union. Thank you very much for your attendance, and thank you again, Minister Dūklavs, for welcoming us here in this beautiful building and in the fine city of Riga. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we have now the unique case that you have a political opening and you don't have double the time that is there. We even have underscored and leaves us some time for also comments or question from the audience. So what I can, I think we have some running microphones, I hope, there, yeah, at least somebody running, coming back with a mic. So I invite you to comment on discussion, of course, focusing now on the regulation, or if you have anything missing that you need to get rid of, feel please invited. So somebody has a comment, a question, wants to start. Sorry. There's one. Please say where you're from, why you're here, and what you want to tell us.
Mario Salerno from Malta. I think the regulation should concern, a core principle, the values and the principles that we treasure. If we do not embrace the principles of ecology, health, fairness, we lose our vision. And it's very important that our vision, what we dream, depends on the quality of values that we believe in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So it seems that you just want coffee, yeah, which is also a solution, and networking, or both. Means you, yeah, please.
My name is Hilde Brands. I work for the US Mission in Brussels, and I was wondering about the deadline that the Commission set for the proposal. I thought there was a deadline to come to an agreement by July. Will the Commission withdraw its proposal, or will you be able to proceed on the proposal?
Yeah.
I'm not representing Commission, but from the Council's point of view, what we think is that it's important to have the deal now in June under Latvian presidency. And I think in that way we can only secure a good path ahead in terms of the trialogues. Because otherwise, and this is something that we have discussed with Luxembourgish presidency that is taking over from us in July, that clearly there is no way that anything would change significantly between now and I mean rather next Tuesday and 13th of July when there is the next meeting of the Council. I hear now and then people, well, let me have more time, let me have more days. My answer normally to that is, why did you not come up with those ideas already in the previous months? And often that is the case. But if there are ideas that they have come up with and that they have not been simply heard because there is no way to go through with that, then that's the politics, and we have to deal with that. So when it comes to institutions like Council, and then I believe it's similar in Parliament, but Martin is better placed to comment on, of course, what's happening in the Parliament, but what's happening in the Council, for sure, we are making policy. So it's not that every proposal can be taken on board. Therefore, from our perspective, again, to cut it short, without trying to preempt what Commission will do, this is not for me to tell, but on the Council side, we need to have a deal now. Otherwise, I think there is a high risk that there is withdrawal. Thank you. I guess that Martin can add to that as well.
I think there's no fixed deadline, maybe in the 20th of June, to finish our work. It's not possible, because we can make an agreement in the Parliament. We can find a solution maybe in July, but I think second week in September, we can find an agreement in the Parliament. And the Council can find an agreement next week, maybe. So the two institutions can only find an agreement. And then we start the trilogues. And it's open if we find at the end a compromise. It's complete open. But it's on the hand of the Commission to say, okay, it's not enough, we start the process again. In my view, I say, okay, is it better to find now a compromise between Council and Parliament? And from my point of view, I can say we finished our work at that moment when everything is agreed, not when a part is only agreed. So it's on Mr. Timmermans in the next week to say, okay, the process is ongoing, or we stop it now. It's not in our hand.
Perhaps I would allow a minor comment to the lady asking a question and to all the organic farmers and farmers present here. I consider that this would be really a huge step forward if we agree on this chapter, on this new regulation during this year, during Latvian presidency. As everybody understands, this is really a huge step towards and closer to a trialogue. And of course, that expression and manifestation was quite opposite. Opinions will take place, definitely will take place. And I consider that currently it is really important for us to reach that trialogue process. Decision of the European Council is not a final one, and all those members of the European Parliament presenting 28 member states of the European Union, of course, will have their own proposals. They will be forced to discuss that proposal, and no surprise that Aivars Lapiņš currently is leading and heading negotiations, and we have information that such proposals are proposed more than 400 in number, and will be forced to consider and review all those. I think that it will be hard work to members of the European Parliament as well, but we must do it, and we still hope very much that on June 16, at the meeting of the Council, will reach that agreement. And as Mr. Aivars has mentioned before, I think we have come to the moment whether we have such political power and political will to make that step and reach that trialogue, or I presume that further presidencies would tackle that proposal very good as groups of member states. If groups of member states are not ready to compromise for a minor step, of course we can convene tens, dozens and more meetings and everybody stays with his or her own position. I think then when we should think what the next action would be. And I still hope, I hope very much that June 16, I have such an impression after informal meeting, ministers' meeting, where my counterparts and persons, my peers here at the panel, have been present when we had an opportunity to exchange our opinions and our thoughts. And after that ministerial informal meeting, I have a great confidence that we can reach that agreement on a general approach and reach trialogue process on June 16. I really hope that we'll manage that on June 16 and you'll be announced the result as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister, for giving us hope that a success will be achieved and we can move into trialogue. But I think I would like to recall the contribution from our friend from Malta concerning the principles of organic farming, and that this leads critically to a process-based approach. And Mr. Häusling reminded us at the start of his contribution that it is the overall system of farming that enables the impact to be delivered. And from that point of view, I personally believe, and I think that view is shared amongst the sector as a whole and amongst many member states, I would say the majority of member states, that an end product-based approach based on thresholds is not consistent with those principles. Also, as I said in my brief introduction, it will lead to an unlevel playing field amongst member states, and it will mean that the market will be disrupted, and I say again that the European logo for organic food will make little sense across the whole of the Union. It also is clear that we mustn't leave the Latvian presidency with uncertainty, and as I understand it, the current proposal potentially leaves uncertainty for another 6 years, with the possibility of a report and the possibility for an end product-based, threshold-based approach coming back in the end. I can't see that we will enable dynamic green growth with that policy. So I have to say that I'm confident we can find a solution, but to get that balance between two opposing approaches needs some elegant footwork on the part of the Latvian presidency and amongst the Council at the meeting on the 16th of June. Thank you.
So I have to thank you for your question, because you saw there's a real discussion starting here. So thanks for this. As we have now heading slowly towards coffee break, I have seen some people raising their hands. So it's now the last round, and I take comments. I have two people there. Is anybody wanting to say something? Raise your hand now, because otherwise I close. Okay, I have first here, there, and then behind the lady. And then we close. Okay, so please.
Thank you very much. There is a fourth player that is ongoing now in the European Union. That is the...
Who is speaking?
Andrea Ferrante Ayab. And there is a fourth player that is influencing a lot of discussion on new regulation. That is the TTIP agreement ongoing. A lot of regulation are now influenced by that. So some regulation are totally stopped as the seed regulation. And the question is, how, during the trilogue, having in mind that you find an agreement, during the trilogue, this very important negotiation will influence this new regulation? Having in mind, for example, that production without soil in the US, it's possible. You have already a Dutch farm that are producing strawberries without soil for the US market in organic. And what will be the future in this framework. So the question, very simple, is this negotiation ongoing on TTIP will influence the trilogue or not?
Okay, thanks. Then we have here, we collect then and you have a last round then, just to be efficient. So here, Mr. Schmidt. Yep. And then it's Aivars. If you already can bring the microphone, so we are quick.
Hans-Peter Schmidt from Germany. I have a question about the agency. Mr. Häusling, I very well understand your intention to harmonize things, but the Treaty of Lisbon, it says there is subsidiarity. This means you only pass administrative powers to the European Union if it's absolutely necessary. If there is no other way to deal with that, it's an absolute exception. Therefore, my question to Mr. Dūklavs: what is the view of the member states? Are you ready to go with the concept that administrative powers are taken away from the member states and put into a centralized agency? I think this is highly problematic in the delicate balance of institutions, and I think there will not be many member states to go along with that.
I am Eva Ács from Hungary, the Hungarian IFOAM Council member. First of all, I would like to express my thanks to be here in Latvia, in Riga. I am very much impressed with your country, and it's a privilege to be here. On the other hand, the future of organic farming is in your hand in a way nowadays. And I would like to just point out that the situation of organic production is in Europe is in a very special position, because the need of organic products is growing absolutely rapidly. We would never expect and we would never hope speed of growth in the market like it is now. But there are warnings that not enough farmers are converting in the different countries, and therefore it is a sign that the organic farming is a fragile system, because of the expectations, the regulations. It is a very, very important key element whether the farmers are able to get into the system. So, because this whole existing organic farming in Europe was built up by the organic movement, my request to you who are making the decisions to listen to the voice of the organic movement, listen to the voice of the IFOAM EU group, because they are the ones who are the best and the deepest in the topic. So this is our message to all of the decision makers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I closed the round for comments because we have to come to an end, and I would like to start that because Martin wanted to say something, I interrupted, but there's, I think, the issue of agency, your proposal, if you can say something, and as much as I know you, also the issue TTIP, I think you might also address, if you want.
Yes, I came from Strasbourg, and we had an interesting debate about TTIP, but we had no debate at the end in the parliament. Mr. Schulz postponed the debate about TTIP because there was 200 amendments in the parliament, and Mr. Schulz says too much amendments back to the Committee for Trade. It's a signal, because there are so a lot of discussion about TTIP, and nobody knows what is the consequence of TTIP in all sectors. It's not only in the organic sector, it's in the whole sector of consumer protection, of trade, and on environmental aspects. So, but I personally think it's not, I don't discuss about TTIP when we go in negotiations on the organic trade. Because We have an agreement between the United States and Europe. We accept the American standard and the Americans accept European standard. It's not every time very clear, is it good or not, but it's out of the TTIP negotiations. Organic is separate at the moment, so I don't think it's had a big influence of our trialogues. On the second point, the agency. The agency is an old idea of the organic sector. And I tried to explain in the beginning, we have now 28 standards in 28 member states. And in Germany we have different standards between 16 Bundesländer. I think this is the main problem for the sector. And nobody knows what the people are doing in Germany, and nobody knows what people doing in Austria maybe. There's no was heißt Informationsaustausch? Informationsaustausch? There are no information between the member states. So I think an agency, first point is to find all information on one point. It's no new institution, it's no new control institution, but we have to harmonize it with the agency, the standards in 28 member states. And one of the main points is the import control. I think it's not acceptable that we have more than 60 standards for import controls. Sorry, it's a big problem. So I think an agency has a possibility to make, on this point, harmonize for import standards. So I think we can discuss it on what point we can, what things is possible for the agency, but it's not acceptable at the moment. 2 people in Europe controls the whole sector from Dublin, and I think this is not a good idea to hold on with the standards. So one of the main points is to collect information between the member states and to harmonize it, and then we can discuss what more can an agency do in the European standard.
Thank you. If I may just very quickly respond to this point on TTIP and link it to the regulation. The powerful in trade negotiations are winning on the basis of equivalency, and we've heard about the way in which that's inconsistent. So basically, what we have in TTIP is an example of the way in which trade negotiations enable the powerful to continue with systems and practices that are deemed equivalent, and that's, you could say, fair. But what we're seeing in the proposal for the regulation is a requirement for full compliance, which will take away that opportunity for the least powerful. Now, I want to tie up also the point from Aivars in Hungary, reminding us that we're not having enough farmers converting in Europe, and that we must listen to the voice of the organic movement and organic farmers. Remember, this is a worldwide movement. 80% of the world's population are currently using practices which are not conventional, not intensive and industrial. They are effectively organic type systems, and the aim of the movement worldwide is to transform food and farming systems. What we're playing out here in Europe, in the most powerful and wealthiest part of the world, is a situation which is disempowering those with little power. Our objective must be to empower them, and the regulation in Europe should be consistent with that objective worldwide to enable people to continue with the transformative approach to food and farming that organic represents. So we must listen to the organic movement, listen to the sector, and understand the consequences that we're playing out at the moment with a regulation that will fail to achieve that objective.
Yes, thank you. Well, I just wanted to shortly reflect on what has been said also here in the audience, because we have to be very careful, especially when you talk about, when it comes to regulation proposal, we have to be aware of what was initially the Commission proposal, and now what is on the table in one of the institutions in the Council, and then what is on the table when it comes to a process in the Parliament with hundreds of amendments, where I believe by 22nd of June, that is one day before midsummer festivity here in Latvia, and also Jānis name day that Latvians celebrate very much, that will come up. So when it comes to the Commission initial proposal, I have to say that there was a huge majority of the member states inside the Council that did not agree with what Commission put forward. So therefore we were seeking compromises already at the time of Italian presidency even. Now what Latvian presidency has put on the table is, by the way, compliant with what, Sir, you said here about subsidiarity, I think. If we speak globally about subsidiarity, this is what we actually allow now by our text that is on the table. Because for those member states who have nationally the thresholds for their own producers of their certification, we are happy to allow that. This is subsidiarity. This is clearly subsidiarity, so we're not going into detail. However, we on a global scale harmonize. This is what the presidency text says now, what is avoidable, what is not, and that there should be investigation. And that, I think, fully complies generally with what was said by Christopher. So, of course, what I'm telling you now may seem to some of you a bit of a cocktail, but yes, that's what is a policy making. You have to compromise. And so I see even here some seeming divergence in views if you say from one side that you have to have a subsidiarity, yeah, but you have to have certain degree of harmonization, but then you have to be general at the level of the Basic Act, but not then letting Commission to do much of that in delegated acts. I see 4 problems there at least. I think you see them as well, right? So therefore, this is what it takes. This is what is policy making about. And we really try to strike the balance in the Council, and this is not a final go. So I really appreciated the valuable comments that were made, because that just illustrates how divergent the views could be, and I'm convinced that it's not an easy task for Christopher and Marco and colleagues in the organization also to get your messages across, because I believe that they are not always the same. And I presume that inside IFOAM you also have to compromise a bit on certain aspects. But I understand that on the central point, I think where we are driving now from the presidency side for the Council, and also where I see the main streamline in the Parliament, is I think we are in the same tune. So I think that song can be sung together. It's only Marco today and Martin who has either no tie or a different tie, but I think there is already a good coherence between the President of the Council and your President when it comes to the tie. So I think that's a good sign for having the deal soon. It's official Latvian presidency tie indeed. But maybe I pass to our Minister, to the President of the Council, to say a few closing words from the Latvian side and as the Chair of the Council, please.
Thank you, Aivars, for a broad comment, and because he is just from Latvian Agriculture's Ministry's head of works and leader of these consultations. I'm not going to talk long because a lot has been said, and thank you very much, colleagues, for what you mentioned. I just want to say that you, that you make a step forward, so similar to what we as ministers do, because there will be never one truth among all member states, but we must reach a common single agreement. And I wish you luck in this Congress, and so that you, in the end, you can find a common solution, a common agreement. Good luck. Thank you.
And we come to the end almost in time, but it was good that we could have some discussion, but also the closing word showed a little bit where the political discussion is now, and in particular on the regulation. Of course, you have in the workshop 1 and 2, but probably more 1, really also a chance to deepen the discussion and go more, so there's a lot of opportunities. I would like now, also with the presidency, we are partner, give the minister and the other speakers a gift for being here. Kalin, if you can just turn over. So for to thank you, some Latvian specialities, which of course, Minister, you always drink organic already by habitude. We have now a coffee break, and for for the speakers a press conference. And as we want to allow always more time for networking, the workshop sessions after, they only start 11:15, so you really have now some time to use it for inter-dialogue. And yeah, those people here go to a press conference you will not catch now, but part of them later. And thank you again for this opening. And we see again in coffee break or latest in the workshops. And sorry, I have to say, please give this back here, there, because it's only translation here, and don't run in workshops with this nice and valuable technical devices.